Welcome in the ring, guys. Welcome in the ring. And as usual, I am so glad that so many of you can join. I'm so glad about that. As you know, as you come on, we always ask that we like and share, like and share, like and share. Again, it's so nice to see so many of you. I'm adjusting at my end a little bit. And as you know, we always say that in the ring is where we contend with ideas. It is where we confront the brutal facts, we dismantle misinformation, we oppose prejudice and stereotypes, and we destroy old, outdated worldviews. Folks, welcome. I am supposed to have Mr. Aubrey Norton as my guest this evening. Mr. 𝗪𝗵ǒ 𝗧𝗵𝗲 is supposed to be dropping by as well. 𝗪𝗵ǒ is a little more iffy due to several unforeseen circumstances. And I want to let you know also that Mr. Aubrey Norton is caught in traffic. I mean, what is happening on the East Bank these days with that traffic? And so I am watching that. Folks, I'm very hopeful that these guys are going to join us. We have lots to discuss, especially whether we witnessed yesterday an insurrection or an attempted coup in the United States of America. I'm going to be checking your comments very, very closely this evening, monitoring what you guys have to say on that. Again, for those of you who are joining, you know, I'm going to tell you, the price of admission is to share the live stream. Guys, those of you who are joining us on Twitter, we are so happy that you can join us. Those of you who are joining us on YouTube, we're equally pleased that you've joined us as well. Subscribe on YouTube, like, you can click the heart. For those of you who are joining us on Twitter, you guys know I love you. I dedicate a lot of time on Twitter sharing information. And got a lot of haters there too, but I got a lot of people who support what we are doing. And I am very, very appreciative of that. So folks on Twitter, retweet if you can. And I hope you guys are tuned in even now. And those of you on Facebook, you know what you have to do. I see my friend 𝗪𝗵адц 𝗜𝗵𝗴 is watching. I wonder if I can drag 𝗪𝗵адц in the ring this evening. 𝗪𝗵ած, if you have the time and I can pull you in the ring, just hit me up on WhatsApp. I'd love to have your thoughts on a couple of things. Folks, today was a very eventful day for me. It was a very, very eventful day for me. And some of you might know why. I'm looking at things happening in the United States of America. You're looking at the U.S. Embassy here. I mean, since November 3rd, when it was clear that Mr. Biden had won, Mr. Joe Biden, the president-elect currently, had won the elections, I asked what has happened to the, congratulatory remarks from the U.S. Embassy. Well, folks, that was not to be. Till this day, we ain't see congratulation yet from the U.S. Embassy. So, I was just looking at events yesterday and saying, you know what? These guys are not, practicing what they preach at all, because Sarah and Lynch has fiddled so much in our election. Look what is happening in their own country, and they can't even speak against that. And so today, I had a one-man protest outside of the U.S. Embassy. Folks, you all know I don't have to have a lot of crowd and people. I am well able to defend myself. I just want to share with you part of what transpired there outside of the U.S. Embassy. Let me hope. Power. That was the will of the people demonstrated on November 3rd. That was the will of the American people.
Transfer of power. So we tell the American ambassador, tell the American government that there should be a peaceful transfer of power in the United States. That is the will of the people. That is the will of the people. For a peaceful transfer. Right? You can imagine, you can have Americans who go into Congress. However they went, legally or illegally, and their folks. Here that I can't stand in my own country in front of the American embassy. That is where we are. That is where we are.
Folks, there you have it. I'm just giving you a little bit of what transpired there just today during lunch in front of the American embassy. And, you know, it is quite funny because I am there and then some of the security officers come to me, say that I cannot take photographs or I cannot video in front of the American embassy. And I just draw the distinction. You could have protesters in the Congress of the United States, sitting in the speaker's seat with their foot up on the table, and a security officer wants to tell me I can't take pictures in front of the embassy of the United States in my own country. In my own country. Well, I did what I had to do, and he can do what he has to do, or whoever else. Right? I was on the right side of the law. I tried to stay on the right side of the law, but the American embassy is a building. And if I could take pictures in front of the State House, by God, I can take pictures in front of the American embassy. If I can take video in front of, the office of the president, I can take video in front of the American embassy. So this is our country, folks, and we are not going to let anybody come here and dictate how we should move and what we should do, how we should come and how we should go. We have seen that these folks do not, in lots of instances, especially where Sarah Ann Lynch is concerned, they do not practice what they preach at all. Do not. And we have seen that. We have seen that. And so I did what I had to do. I stood there and said what I had to say. And whatever happens, happens. Right? We as Guyanese people have to stand up for our rights. We have to stand up for what we know is right. And don't let anybody tell us differently. Because they come here exposing all of these values and what's not, and even they cannot live up to their own values. Even they cannot live up to their own values. You see what I'm telling you? Can't even live up to their own values. So I would advise each and every one of us to continue to let your voices be heard. Do not be afraid. We have to look out for each other, because this is what is happening. This is what is happening. We're in our own country, and people want to be telling us all kinds of story, right? All kinds of story in our own country. I want to let me see if I can do this. 1 second for me. I'm trying to share some information with you. Just bear with me, folks. Just bear with me. Let me see if I can share. Yeah, I'm trying to share some information with you in terms of what the leader of the opposition would have said on this matter. But I ask you to bear with me. There's all kinds of stuff happening at my end. All kinds of stuff. Let me see if I can get it now. All right, let me see if I can do this. All kinds of stuff happening. I really want to share this with you. Let me see if I get it. All right, so that's not going to happen. Yes, folks. So these are the things that we are looking at. I'm still looking to see if I get Mr. Aubrey Norton to come on I'm going to see how that go. Bear with me. I'm trying to get some additional information for you. I'm trying to share a video right now, and it's doing its own story. But bear with me. Let me see how I can get this done for you. I had this set ready to go, and then it's bareback in our story now. Let me see if I get it now for you. I don't know why it's not going. I don't know why it is not going where I need it to go. Yeah, folks, so I'm looking at that. I'll get it to you in a minute. And also, as you're coming on, I'm looking at what is happening where COVID is concerned. So we'll come back to what's happening in the United States of America. But believe it or not, the Minister of Health has announced just a couple of hours ago that there are 19 dorm students who have tested positive for COVID-19. 19 dorm students, and there are 10 teachers as well who have tested positive. There are 10 teachers as well who have tested positive. And so we keep saying that we have to keep monitoring that. The government is doing all kinds of madness where COVID-19 is concerned. So as of today, there are 19 dorm students who have tested positive for COVID-19, and there are 10 COVID-19 positive teachers as well. So we have to keep monitoring that, folks. We have to keep monitoring that and take precautions that are necessary. I'm sending all kinds of things happening in my end this evening. All precautions necessary to protect yourself from becoming infected with COVID-19. In addition to that, as we are coming on this evening, I want to alert you to one other bit of information before I change. So watch that, folks. I'm getting Mr. Ramjitan to come. He did promise to come, and it seems as though he was able to push some of the things aside and join us this evening. It's a lot of moving pieces where I am, a lot of moving pieces. So I'm getting that sorted out, and so we can get ahead with the business that we have at hand. I'm losing my notes, the video we had set up to show you some comments from the leader of the opposition that is not doing what I wanted to do. And so there we have it. I think I've even lost my my notes now. But folks, look, in all seriousness, we have to look out for ourselves. We have to look out for each other. The Americans will come, they will say one thing and they will do something else. The Canadians, the British, the European Union, they will come and say one thing, and then, like we see in America, they will do something totally contrary. But we got to keep putting our best foot forward, and we got to do what we have to do. The American ambassador, I don't know how many of you saw it, put out a statement early on today through the American Embassy's Facebook page, and some of it is real tripe. I don't know how else to put it. It's real tripe. She says that she is deeply saddened and shocked by the events which took place in the U.S. Capitol. She is deeply saddened and shocked by events, not the insurrection, not the attempted coup, the events. The events, right? They would call 𝗁𝗵 and they would say 𝗁𝗵 High Street. They would say rigging, attempted rigging, and all of these things that are accusations, right? But things that the world's seeing, right? She calls events. Events. Just like that. Events. Well, very, very credible U.S. personalities in the media, in politics, and otherwise have called that event at the Capitol yesterday an insurrection. Others have called it an attempted coup. So the American ambassador, Sarah Lynch, can hide behind events and being shocked and saddened. I was very shocked and saddened when I saw the behavior of the American ambassador during our electoral cycle from March 2nd. I was shocked. It was the American ambassador who went flying about the country visiting polling place with a gentleman who was under investigation by the American authorities, right? And then when asked about that issue, she said that she associates with a lot of people, just like Donald Trump. He associates with Putin and all kinds of people. She said, as in her capacity, she has to meet all manner of people. All manner of people. Yep. That is what the lady said. Why can tell you? Right? Don't ask me to lie. That's what the lady said. She has to associate with all manner of people. And so we are watching that. She went on to say that lawlessness and rioting are always unacceptable and do not represent the values of the United States as enshrined in the Constitution. She keeps talking about these values. I ain't seen them. I ain't seen them over the last 5 years of the Trump administration. All of these American values, because if I take what Trump does and says as American values, my God, I am certain y'all don't want them kind of values. I am certain y'all don't want those kinds of values. Right? I am certain. And what she failed to do here as well is to call a spade a spade. Because she doesn't speak to the Democratic Party, the Republican Party. She doesn't call the politicians instigating what is happening here. She doesn't call them out, right? But we know what is happening. Just this afternoon, a 𝗪𝗵cie article walked us through some of what these ABC countries have been saying. Well, BCEU countries have been saying, right? And for instance, we saw a statement in addition out of the Organization of American States, right? Which went on to say, according to 𝗪𝗵cie, that they condemn and repudiate the attacks against institutions being carried out today, which was yesterday, in the United States of America. Yep. And Ron Sanders, this diplomat out of Antigua and Barbuda, he condemned the OAS condemnation. And he said that there were no condemnation of politicians who were behind those protests and thuggery in an effort to remain in power in defiance of democracy. That's what Ron Sanders says, right? And if you thought that the real riggers, the PPP would have none to say, well, you're probably holding your breath in vain. Is Mr. 𝗵𝗔 ready to come on? Is my guest ready? I am seeing that he's in the green room, but I don't know if he's ready. I'm looking to see when his video is on, and then we're going to take it from there. I want to tell you what Anil Nandlall said, and I wish 𝗪𝗵𝟏 was on so I can put this to him, right? Hear what the East Coast rigger says. Anil Nandlall, the East Coast rigger. I stand with those upholding the rule of law. I call for the will of the electorate to prevail as democracy battles for survival in its most formidable global bastion. Tribe, tribe, tribe. Tribe, tribe, tribe. That's what he said. 𝗪𝗪cie went on to say that Mr. Nandlall is also an executive member of the People's Progressive Party, I almost said People's National Congress, that had depended heavily on diplomatic support from the United States, among several other countries and international organizations, for the results of the recounted votes cast in the March 2nd, 2020 general and regional elections to be used to declare his party the winner. Right? And you can tell that Anil is very, very reluctant here. He is very, very reluctant. He is very, very reluctant. You can tell. Very, very reluctant. Right? He didn't speak to the Democratic Party, the Republican Party. He didn't call the name of a leader. Right? But put him to point out the leader of the opposition, Mr. Joseph Harmon. Put him to point out anybody else, and you'll see what is happening. He can call names locally, but when it comes to the Americans that put him in power, he's not going to call names. Ladies and gentlemen, I think I have Mr. Aubrey Norton with me this evening. Mr. Norton, welcome. I know that you are stuck in traffic somewhere on the East Bank or on the West Coast there, but I'm privileged that you could join this evening. Right off the bat, what are your thoughts on what is transpiring in the U.S. with the storming of the U.S. Capitol? Some persons call it a coup, some others call it an insurrection. What do you call it, sir?
Well, I would prefer to analyze it rather than just label it. What in fact you have,
Go right ahead.
what you have in fact, in my opinion, is a situation in which a state says it's democratic, it operates in a democratic fashion. One of the pitfalls of democracy is to allow persons who don't believe in democracy to come to power. And I believe in this regard, that is essentially what happened. A person came to power who, from inception, one could recognize did not have an interest in democracy. And as such, once democracy would have ought that person to come, from the inception, you saw him going against the rule of law. You saw him operating outside of the confines of the Constitution. You also saw him clearly idealizing the people who are authoritarian and dictatorial. And so I don't want to condemn the entire system. What I say is that there is need, or I should put it differently, democracy is a, and in this process of building democracy, there will always be those who will throughout the course of democracy. And I believe in large measure that is what happened. Now, the events that were utilized clearly can be categorized in the way they have been categorized as insurrection and whatever. But to me, the underpinning of the insurrection is what matters. It is underpinned by extremism. It is underpinned by racism. It is underpinned by a view which says only a certain particular kind of people can govern, and that is dangerous. And so I would say that one has to look at it in depth. When one looks at what they did to Guyana, in the sense of they were not prepared to look into the votes that were fraudulent, they were not prepared to even basically acknowledge the findings of the recount. They proceeded at that time to say President Granger should concede and the PPP should come to power. And so they end up installing a government that is illegitimate. Some people would say it's carnal. I don't really believe. I would say it's unfortunate for them, but just what they did to people in some regard came back to haunt them. And so one has to make this point that we need to get over the United States of America, that in attempting to promote democracy, you cannot listen to one side and operate based on the information provided by one side. It also manifests the fact that in many cases, it is not democracy that matters, but it's the interests of those who purport to control the system of democracy. So I believe there are a number of issues to be looked at here. In the US context, how do they strengthen democracy and prevent what has happened from rehappening? In the international context, They need to recognize that you can have false claims. You can have a reality in which who appear to have one did not win because of fraud, etc. And they need to look in a much more thoroughly at these issues before they pronounce. I mean, if you see what happened in Bolivia, Guyana apart, you would
Yeah.
recognize that in some regard, democracy is held captive to certain powerful interests, and that shouldn't be. The will of the people should prevail rather than the economic and other powers of people. That
Thanks for that,
essentially.
Mr. Norton. I'm coming back to those interests that you spoke about there, but we have Mr. 𝗪𝗵 𝗧𝗵𝗲 with us, and I wanted to pull him in to talk about to contextualize what transpired yesterday in the U.S. Capitol.
Thanks very much, Sherrod, for being in the ring. It's a pleasure again. Well, to contextualize what has happened in the Capitol, Washington, and all that transpired there yesterday is an extraordinary, stunning event for me. You would appreciate that there has been very close relationship with people like myself and leaders of the AFC for a long, long time with America because of the fact of its democracy. And it is regarded as a bastion, a beacon of democracy. And to see a president, you know, inciting a crowd to go and do what they did there really was beyond my belief that it would have ever happened, and also beyond comprehension, inciting his own Republican people, supporters and so on. And it came as a huge surprise to me. What also came as a big surprise was the incapacity, it seems, of the American security of the Capitol. It was very embarrassing. I know for a fact what we were trying to do in that period of time from when we had our painful exercise here and when the Americans were coming down on us about getting security right and this and that and all the controversies that happened there. We managed. There was one incident at that settlement that, you know, made me very embarrassed because the police that I had instructed that you got to be very, very careful how you retaliate to protesters. But apart from that incident, for all these long months, we managed. And one would have expected, with the multiplicity of forces that they have, that they would have ensured that that shrine, that temple of democracy called the Capitol, which houses, of course, the Senate and the House of Representatives, that would never have happened. So I like to contextualize in that sense that I'm stunned. It is with disbelief that is happening, and also to the extent that it is happening as a result of a president of America inciting people to do that, especially a president that was trying to pontificate on Guyana. He and Pompeo, his agent, they were doing all of that. And I couldn't believe it. And I think it is a very dark day, a very sad day for that to have happened in the beacon of democracy.
Yeah.
By the way, I want to tell you that I'm very happy that you also went out there in front of the American embassy to make the call. I just saw it just before coming on. I didn't realize it. But thanks very much for doing that. And it is, you know, a useful little exercise to remind those who like to do all kinds of things to other countries and to give the impression that they are the paragons of virtue, that here, when you got your fingers stuck in your own problems, you're sometimes really, you know, out of your breath, really, to deal with it. And that is what happened to America. It's a very dark day for America. But I know American democracy has a remedial aspect of it. It is going to come out of this, and knowing that Biden, by far, a greater liberal and a man that reconciles, we're going to have at least them looking good after a couple of out of this. What it will do to the American people, I feel it will do a tremendous polarization, because Trump will still have the support of a lot of people with him. And that is the polarizing thing that you can have.
I'm going to come back to that, because how do they come out of it if Trump has that kind of support? But I want to pull back in, Mr. Norton, on the fact that several nations and organizations have issued statements on what transpired yesterday. I want to pick you up, Mr. Norton, on the OAS, which issued a statement. I won't go through it, but Mr. Ron Saunders, the ambassador coming out of Antigua and Barbuda, took exception to the statement issued by the OAS and the fact that it called no names. And Mr. Saunders' contention was there are politicians in the U.S. who are behind what transpired yesterday. And in his words, let me quote a part of it. The politicians who are behind these protests and thuggery in effort to remain in power in defiance of democracy and the will of the people. I took exception that the OAS statement didn't call any names in condemnation.
Well, the OAS is presently constituted in large measure, especially its leadership, has been constituted by the United States of America. You shouldn't be surprised. The present head of the OAS, as I understand it, should not have been there if the law and convention were followed, because generally that person should not come from the United States of America. So the OAS, to start with, is on bad ground. Then when we add Bolivia, what happened in Bolivia and what happened in Guyana, you would recognize that the OAS at this stage is not committed to principles, that they are operating at the whims, fancies, and caprices of powerful interests. And the very powerful interest will be offended if they call names. So one would expect that they would not call names. I am not surprised. I expected the OAS to either stay quiet or issued a watered down statement. They chose the latter. But then one also has to recognize, and I think the US needs to learn from this process. If you had a situation where Obama came to power, and Obama came to power, you saw a movement in a direction which took into consideration the multicultural nature of the United States of America. While he was promoting that, simultaneously, a white supremacist approach re-emerged. And so by the time the Obama presidency was through, you had competing forces.
Mm-hmm.
And in these competing forces, you had one side the Democrats and the other side the Republicans, led unfortunately by Trump, that sought to reverse the gains of that period and went down that road. So the point I'm making is that dialectically, while on the one hand you're having progress, it can produce negatives on the other hand, as happened in the case of the United States with the coming of Trump. And therefore the lesson to be learned is that democracy is still in the making. It is not final. I refrain from calling any country the bastion of democracy. The reason why I refrain from it is
Tell us.
because I do believe that it's a process, and it's not a process that is complete and sacrosanct. It's a process in which there are still challenges to. It's a process which still has weaknesses. It's a process with problems to overcome. And so people will have to be very, very vigilant to ensure that the democratic process prevails. It has been complicated by the change in the nature of communications in the world. one would have thought, based on what the APNU AFC did in government, that it would have easily rode its way back into power. But with the Jagdeo team lobbying the United States, influencing certain positions, what became important was not what was done to place the country on a path to good governance, but again, special interests. And those special interests acted against us, installed an illegitimate government, and the rest is history. But
Yeah.
we need to note that
A
it's
catchfish government.
and that the process has its pitfalls, and we have to be vigilant to ensure that a genuine democratic society or societies emerge, and then we take it from there.
Great. Mr. Ramjitan, the Attorney General, Mr. Anil Nandalal, issued a statement on his Facebook page, which one takes as his personal views. There has not been a statement from the government, fraudulent as they are. The British government has issued a statement. The European Union has issued a statement. Canada has issued a statement. Why hasn't Guyana issued a statement on the events that transpired in the U.S. yesterday, in the U.S. Capitol? Mr. Ramshan, just hold for me. I think your mic is muted.
Is it okay now?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm hearing you.
I suspect it's because of the self-interest of the People's Progressive Party. Remember, I just mentioned it was Pompeo and the Trump government that pontificated in what we had here as the events after the March elections, and to a certain extent, they feel obliged to just remain muted on the issue. I am glad that at least the Attorney General made a statement. He is well known for speaking out on issues, and I want to feel that the Jagdeo faction of the party, which tries to keep in restraint other people from speaking, the control freakism that is there, in this occasion didn't prevent Anand Nandalal from speaking his mind on the issue. And I believe that it is indeed, something that we should state, that we are with other countries and other personages in Guyana who are speaking out against what Trump tried to do in America. Yes, I just wanted to say to Aubrey that, oh yes, it might have its imperfections, but since 240 years ago, we have had the America being you could call it one of the most democratic places to be. It had its history. We have all in the Western world seen where the parliament and so on came from. And the trouble with it is always going to be fragile, but it should not be broken by leadership. Leadership, like what the APNU AFC did during that period of time, must ensure that it live on. And if, of course, there is a government that was declared by the states of Pennsylvania and wherever, just like there was a declaration made by our chairman of the Elections Commission, we respect that. You then go to court with an elections petition. I don't know if there's an election America, but
whatever their version is.
Institutions of democracy rather than go rampaging in the Capitol building. That is what I find, a kind of a denigration, a kind of retrograde step that happened out there. But we in Guyana, we did everything to prevent that. We spoke to our main supporter bases. Do not do that. And as I said, the one set of people that did that was the PPPites up at Bath settlement that caused one death and injury to police.
Mr. Norton?
I want to add as well, one cannot rule out that the PPP has no interest in the rule of law. And to the extent that the PPP believes that the law must operate in the way they want it rather than the way it should suggests to me that they pay a lot of lip service to democracy. But when it comes to the substantive things to make a democratic society work, they are not in for it. They are, just look at the nature of 𝗪𝗏 𝗧𝗵𝗲 and the things that he does, You will see he is not a Democrat. He's not interested in
Certainly.
personal liberties of people, etc. You see, for me, democracy is more than saying I am democratic. If you're in a democratic society, then the law should govern. No individual, however powerful that individual is, should be able to trample on the rights of others. But what we see in Guyana is just that, the trampling of people's rights, the firing of people without any basis, etc. And that suggests to me that there is really no interest in the rule of law. Where does the interest of the PPP lies? The interest lies in ensuring they get support to do what they want to do. Once they don't get that support, then the institution comes into question. Let us not forget that when the PPP was uncomfortable with the United States, they went right in the embassy and used them out, which suggests the focus is not on democracy and which country is given leadership to democracy. It comes down to what the PPP and 𝗪𝗏 believe as their interest. They pursue that, and the law takes second place. Also, if you look at their approach to transparency, accountability, you will recognize that they have no interest whatsoever in democracy. And so the PPP not issuing a statement is a statement in itself. It's a statement that says, look, there are times when you will serve our interests, and we can be fine with you. There are times when you aren't, and we are not going to. But we're not going to go there on a limb to talk about protecting democracy and offend Trump and Pompeo, who actually brought them to power. Even though Pompeo in recent times have been advocating for the protection of the democratic institutions in the United States of America. As it relates to Cameron's question of Bastille leadership, I don't have a big issue over it. I acknowledge that the United States were the leaders of democracy. They were the producers of the political party, etc. But I merely do not describe them as a bastion of democracy, because for me, when you arrive at the point of being a bastion, there's little or no scope for reversing. And in my opinion, there are still some openings in the US democratic system that can be penetrated by extremists, and there can be a reversal. And it was on that basis I said it, but not to suggest that the United States isn't democratic. In one of the academic articles I wrote a few years ago, I did point it out that democracy is on a continuum of shifting power from elites to the people. And so there are many elements of democracy that are still to be achieved, even in the United States of America. The fact that Black Lives Matters emerge suggests that rights of non-whites are being violated, and therefore there is still some way to go in the democratic process.
Fantastic. Mr. 𝗪𝗏, you spoke early on about the US being able to come out of this Trump period. Do you think we are going back to pre-Trump, or are we heading to something else? Or is America destined to become what Trump called other nations, a shithole country?
Well, you know, I don't want that description of Trump of our third world developing countries should now apply to him, quite frankly, because that is the status of his presidency. And I don't want to repronounce the word, but that is what Trump has turned out to be. Look, the important thing here is that America has somewhat been blackened, meaning the perfections that they used to talk about have all been damaged, not necessarily irreparably. But I was watching, let's say, for the CNN and so on, and people are laughing at them. Iran, Turkey, Putin from Russia, and a number of other places that you can regard as not necessarily democratic. And that is what I mean to say when you're going to have a contextualization like this, whereby because of what you have done onto your own country by inciting this, a leadership of the Republican Party allowing it, and then by the way, what plenty of them did in the House of Congress there yesterday, a lot of them tried to come out of it, but they were also leading Trump on. And that is the serious thing about it. But as I said, because 70 million people voted for Trump, that is 47% of the electorate of America. And a lot of them that were there yesterday seem to love Trump fanatically. And that is the thing. If you can't allow rationality, this thing called emotion will take charge. I have seen it happen even when the PPP have done real rascalities and criminalities. Some of their supporters still blindly support them. And that is what I'm talking about. Emotions. And that is the difficulty Biden and his team will have. Because you will have raw emotions. They might not come back to Washington, but in their own strong red states of America, you could have this kind of thing happening in those states where the people just go in and march in and do all kind of nonsense and give Biden a very hard time in his 4 years, just like how they gave Obama, you know, with I can't remember the name of the speakers and so on that really gave him a hard time in his 8 years. And then when they came out, they said they're going to do back and dismantle. And it has some parallels here in Guyana. We had done a lot of good things, you know, in relation to the oil sector, the sugar sector. Everything is being dismantled right now. And that is what, you know, the polarized states result in. You do a couple of things that are going to be good in your term, and then the other person come in and they dismantle it because they said they got a majority. And I rather suspect that the pressure will be on Biden and the new administration, you know, the Pence has seen it through in the Senate. We're going to have that. So it will be very, very difficult. And I rather suspect that there will be a hardening of these Republicans' attitude towards immigrants. We know that in the city of New York and, let's say, California, the state of California, they are far more liberal. But in the red areas, they will be very, very harsh. And that could lead to further problems, which can be very, very difficult to remedy.
Mr. Norton, I want you to contextualize.
Except I will say that in comparison to the Obama period, the Democrats now control the Senate. And that should make it a little easier for Biden. But I'm not saying that they wouldn't go after him in the way they did Obama. I'm merely making the point that the present political construct is a little more disposed to Biden than it was to Obama because they now control the Senate.
Great. Mr. Norton, today the world saw the Speaker of Congress say to us that she would have spoken to the Vice President and she had advised him to enact the 25th Amendment of the US, which is to remove the president from office with 14 days remaining, 13 days remaining until the new administration takes over. She says that because we don't know what tomorrow holds and the president has become a danger to law and order, it is fascinating as it is shocking. Contextualize that for us.
Well, I would say essentially that, look, you have to make a judgment call. Based on the behavior of Donald Trump, one cannot any longer suggest that he's going to be rational. One cannot even suggest that there is mental stability. And therefore, persons making decisions will have to look at these variables and decide whether it is dangerous to leave him there for the next 13 days or it isn't. I am in no position to know the details, but were I in that position, if a man arrives at the point where he is realizing all of his threats, then one should not take the chance with him. And therefore, in my opinion, they should move in that direction, if only because you have to think about a madman having the potential to go ahead with a nuclear war. So my concern here is, does he have the mental and other stability needed for the last 30 days? And when I look at his behavior, I would err on the side of caution and move him. Of course, there are disadvantages to moving him, including his popular base being riled up, etc. They will have to look at the various options, map the scenarios, and then choose. But from my vantage point at this distance, with no intimate knowledge of his mental state, I make logical deductions and conclude that I would opt to let him go home rather than harm us in 13 days.
Yeah, err on the side of caution. 𝗪𝗏?
Yeah, I want to believe that, and I happened to have heard yesterday from a constitutional expert, I think it was from Harvard, that indicated that by the time you start the process to the time of his impeachment, it will take 9 days for the notices to be given to the Senate and this and that and whatever. And he got how much more days? About 12 or 14 days?
13.
Yes, 12 days. And in any event, if he is impeached, I am a little worried about what Pence will do, because I wouldn't want a president like that to ever be pardoned. Now, he was tinkering with the idea of pardoning himself, but I don't think he got that power, and a lot of constitutional experts don't feel he got that power. But if you knock him off and impeach him, and he comes off and is forced to resign, Pence then takes over, and Pence could grant him, like Nixon was granted by Gerald Ford, a general pardon, and you could do nothing. A fellow like Trump has to be indicted and convicted. This is seditious behavior by the American president. And not only those mobsters that went into Capitol building, the president and the Constitution has it, that if you behave mischievously and you do misconduct, whatever, for what they call, for the words they use is misdemeanors and felonies in office, after you come off as president, which is 12 days, 14 days from now, they should hold him up, line him up, and put him in the yellow, we call the orange jacket. You can't do those things because it is sedition. A lot of people are saying that it is even, well, you couldn't get more serious than sedition. But it is criminal what he did. The evidence is there for the whole world to see. If the world was a jury, I am of the opinion that, you know, because of the stalemate that will be drawn by, he continue, because I doubt whether anybody gonna take his instructions as president now. All the military people, if he give them an instruction to, let's say, invade this country or go into Grenada or whatever, they're going to laugh at him because he's made himself that S word that you just mentioned. And they will tell him so, quite frankly. I mean, David is a man trying to tell people how much more votes he wants and things like that. That is crazy coming from a president. And this is the nonsense that, sometimes I get angry about in relation to the personages that are behind this thing, right up to the presidency. So I believe that they should get him locked up immediately after the swearing in of Biden.
Right. Mr. Norton, where are we internationally, given all of these events, given the Trump administration? What does the world, post January 20th look like? And how do we navigate it as a country such as ours?
Well, I think the first thing we need to recognize is that the world is not unified. They are all allies of the US who would be comfortable with Biden's position, and there are other persons in the international world, a la Israel for one, who will be comfortable with a Trump's position. Now, in the circumstance, you will have a situation in which Biden will be expected to repair alliances. You will have a situation where there are going to be states that are not comfortable with Biden's position because some of them actually believe in the Trump approach. So that's the first point I want to make. Let us not treat the world as homogeneous. Let's recognize it is heterogeneous and that there are at least two sides. Then Biden, the task will fall to him and his foreign secretary to repair the damage, but also to create a new vision of a world governed by international law and international diplomatic practices, which will help to shift away from what Trump did. In Guyana's context, in the case of Guyana, Guyana's national interests will have to be pursued. There are elements of that national interest that, I want to put it correctly, there are elements of that national interest that coincides with the views of the Democrats. But cardinal to our interests has always been the Guyana-Venezuela territorial controversy, which is our major foreign policy defense problem. And so we will have to structure our approach to the United States to ensure we obtain the requisite support for Guyana in the controversy over Essequibo. Additionally, we are emerging at a time when Exxon is playing an important role in Guyana, and our foreign policy would be expected to be carried in a way that it will allow us, on the one hand, to accommodate Exxon, but at the same time have them respect Guyana, respect our interests, and take the diplomatic initiatives to ensure that we can benefit from the oil and other resources. So I believe that we have to act cognizant of our territorial problems as well as our economic position. I believe those are going to be two critical factors. Also, I believe Guyana will have to support the United States in promoting multilateralism. Let us not fool ourselves. Small countries do better within a multilateral framework than in the bilateral. Invariably, in the bilateral arrangement, where you as a country, a small country, dealing with bigger countries, you experience an asymmetry in power. in which the big powers dominate. And therefore, multilateralism and small country solidarity will be critical for us. And so that should be the third plank of our approach to the foreign policy as it relates to engaging the Biden government.
Fantastic.
But then must also remember, as an APNU AFC, we have some interests that we need to pursue to ensure that the United States understands what is happening in Guyana, and so we can work towards solidarity and support from them to help us to get rid of this criminal cabal called the PPP that purports to manage Guyana.
Fantastic. Guys, thank you for a very robust discussion this evening. But before I let you go, Mr. Norton, I see you've been making the news in other regards. I see they've linked you with this guy from this Ponzi scheme, stating that you rent some property in Culdigen to him and so forth. Could you clarify?
First of all, I am aware that the PPP took, Jando's PPP took a decision that they cannot cite me for any illegalities while we were in government or out of government. And so they have taken a conscious position that they will seek to smear me. I want to state this. First of all, I have no house in Culdigen. I don't even know who is the chap in the Ponzi scheme. And it should be clear to all and sundry that this is garbage. Where they are saying, I rent the man this house. I own no house in Culdigen. I rent nobody in Culdigen a house. One time, in one article, they put Aubrey Norton, executive member, the PNC. And then when Newsroom did it, they changed it and said Aubrey Norton, a 42-year-old. Well, I am 63. So I sense they're creating nuances. Now, remember that when they said they were coming to search, remember when they said they were coming to search my house, they had said that they're coming to search it under some terrorism act, etc. And then it turned out they claim that there's another Aubrey Norton who'd have been in search his house. I don't know who's this other Aubrey Norton, but it is evident to me there's a clear approach by the PPP to tarnish my image.
Great. Thanks very much for clearing that up for us, Mr. Norton. 𝗪𝗵ощ, the final word goes to you.
I want to say that is part and parcel of the PPP's attack on almost all opponents. They character assassinate in a very deadly form. Of recent times, documents have been leaked about my being involved in armed robbery and sale of cocaine and firearms and all of that nonsense. And they find some document and so on, and they circulate it. This is what they will do. They will do this in an unrelenting way to all those that are major in opposition to them. And they are going to continuously do it. And they have that social media. They got control of a number of sites and all of that carry the line, especially in the support base. Something like that Trump managed to do, to write up his base and so on like that. And then people would meet you and say, well, hey, what happened there, you criminal? And that is very nasty what they do. But I suppose that where they were trained in certain politics, that is what they will do, tarnish and sully the characters of good people. Yeah. But I want our Martin to know that you're going to find that happening with a lot of us all over the place. And it's just they started attacking Kathy and get the ERC to do an investigation and all kind of thing. That is crazy. But there is where there are two purposes to what the PPP wants to do here. They want to distract from what and how they are governing the country, and they want to sully characters. It is also a distraction. So they get you now a little confuffled by saying, what the hell is this? What the ass is this? And so on and so on. But we got to know what we're doing and direct our gaze at their administration and the very many things wrong that they're doing. Up to now, the Minister of Agriculture can't name who the trawler license then,
It's
and he
not
has given
2002.
yeah. You understand what I mean? And the two trawler licenses, and this is what we are having. Oh, it is reputable people. Well, name the people.
Yeah.
And 2 times he got Parliament already, and he hasn't answered the question.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'll probably have to ask the Speaker of the House to use his influence to get the answers to those questions about a trawler license. And then we get other newspaper following up and saying how we are not dealing with the proper issues about oil contracts and so on. As I have said to you, sir, and I'll end here, that oil contract that we did at the time that we did it was one of the best decisions made by the APNU AFC government. Sugar was another thing to right size it. But of course, we are saying that we wanted to deny East Indians jobs. I am indicating that we want to spend a lot of the oil money on a sector that will forever be what was called unprofitable. And we just want to create jobs for the boys. Thanks
And
very
they
much for
describe
allowing
60
Thank
persons
you very
from Wales.
much.
Mr. Aubrey Norton, political scientist and strategist, thanks for coming through this evening. 𝗪𝗵છી 𝗬𝗵𝗏, attorney at law and politician. Thanks as well for your time, fellas. It meant a lot. Thank you.
Thank you.
Folks, there you have it. Just before you go, some housekeeping, as I was saying at the end, there's the PPP who talks about how much persons the AFC filed from the sugar estate. And here they are, recently fired 60 persons from the Wales Sugar Estate, 60 persons. Folks, just before we go, I want to show you the leader of the opposition's response to what has transpired in the USA, and then I'm going to come back and do some housekeeping, and then we call it a night. Here is the leader of the opposition.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the media, and good afternoon, Guyanese at home and in the diaspora. The APNU AFC coalition calls on the United States of America to act in a manner that is consistent with its global leadership role. The APNU AFC coalition has taken note of the unprecedented development in the United States of America and the storming of the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. on the 6th of January 2021, that is yesterday, while legislators were in the process of a count of electoral votes. This, of course, is reminiscent of the storming and vandalizing of the Ghana Elections Commission Center at Ashman Building in Georgetown on March the 5th, 2020. And that also was aimed at stopping the tallying of votes cast at our general and regional elections. On that occasion, executives and agents of the People's Progressive Party executed this dastardly act in full view of several high-ranking Western diplomats. This event was a precursor to the installation of a PPP regime whose legitimacy is subject to judicial challenge in the High Court. We are happy to note that law and order was eventually restored and the legislators in the United States of America were allowed to complete their constitutional duty. What is evident is that both Democrat and Republican legislators were united in their call for the rogue elements who perpetrated this act to face the full force of the law in the United States of America. On the contrary, in Guyana, those rogue elements who created mayhem, damage, and serious threat to our democracy, even though their identities are known, were never charged, but instead they were rewarded with the full powers of our government and access to the treasury of Guyana. These crimes will never go unnoticed and unpunished by our people. The APNU-AFC is of the view that the United States of America will have to act in a manner consistent with the global leadership role it has exercised in decades past, and it must do so quickly. I thank you.
Folks, there we had Mr. Harman, the leader of the opposition, talking to us about what is happening in the context what's happening in the United States. Two things before you go. Zoom in. I have that engagement in the mornings. It's a private engagement with Guyanese citizens, whether you're home here in Guyana or you're in the diaspora, but you have interest home here. I have that engagement in the mornings from 9 to 10 o'clock. And it's a private engagement on Zoom. It is not broadcasted on social media, but it's a way for you to reach your member of parliament and discuss any issue that is bothering you. That's from 9 to 10. And the link is on my Facebook page, Sherry Duncan on my Facebook page. It's also on Twitter, pinned to the top of my page, and it's pinned to the top of my Facebook page as well. The link to get into that private meeting in the mornings from 9 to 10 that I do with members of the public. Also, the Alliance for Change has keynotes coming up this weekend at 7 p.m. on Saturday. It's a kind of political education that happens. We pick a topic and we interrogate that topic with a presenter, and then with rigorous questions and answers. But that's only open for the Alliance for Change members. So if you're an Alliance for Change member and you want to be part of that engagement on Saturday night virtually, hit me up on Facebook, hit me up on WhatsApp, and I'll be sure to give you the information how you can be part of that event. Folks, continue to observe all of the COVID-19 protocols that are in place for your health and for your safety. Social distance, sanitize, wear your mask, watch those crowds of 10 or more persons. Do not go out unless you absolutely have to. Protect your family, protect your loved ones, protect all that are near and dear to you from becoming infected with COVID-19 by observing all of the protocols that are in place for you. And for those of you who were ringside this evening, ringside on Twitter, ringside on YouTube, ringside on Facebook, I thank you that you had the testicular fortitude to join us and the intellectual aptitude to observe all that was said. Thanks again, guys, and please do stay